Hello again, Homewood Patriot fans. Welcome to this episode of Legends of Homewood Patriots Football, featuring our ninth legend, Parker Gargis. As we saw in our last episode featuring Super Bowl champion Evan Mathis, after winning the state championship in 1995, Homewood was unfortunately placed in the highest classification in the state at that time, 6A, which they never really belonged in. Still, they remained competitive during that time in the late 1990s under Coach Bob Newton, reaching the playoffs twice and winning a region championship in 1998. That era ended in 1999 with a playoff loss at Benjamin Russell, a game that portended big things to come. In 2000, the Patriots were moved back down a classification, ushering in an era of unprecedented success for Homewood football, becoming a dynasty over the next 6 years. In that 2000 season, the Patriots were led by two quarterbacks that Coach Jones and Coach Newton agreed should split time with one another at the position, junior Bragg Knott and sophomore Parker Gargis. It was unorthodox, but it worked, with both quarterbacks having successful careers. Knott's 68.9 completion rate his senior season is still number one all-time in Patriot history, as he led Homewood into back-to-back state championship games. The other quarterback during that time was our ninth legend, Parker Gargis. The son of a former Auburn quarterback who holds their record for quarterback rushing yards, and the younger brother of an all-state Homewood quarterback that also played for Auburn, Gargis was too gifted to keep off the field as a sophomore, even though Homewood had a junior quarterback in Bragg Knott that was also excellent. During their time together, Gargis and Knott led Homewood through an incredible 25-game win streak that has yet to be topped by a Patriot team. And collectively, they went 27-3 in their 2 seasons splitting time at quarterback, including 2 state championship games. Wow. Their most famous game, however, is the most famous football game in Homewood history, and widely agreed to be among the greatest state championship games in the state of Alabama's history. A 5-overtime thriller against Benjamin Russell played in Legion Field in December of 2000. Parker won MVP that night as the Patriots won their 3rd state championship in the program's history. During his senior year, Parker led the Patriots to yet another state championship game, a 31-28 victory over Russellville that we will discuss in more detail in our next episode. In this episode, however, we're going to take a deep dive with Parker into that 5-overtime game against Ben Russell. I think you're going to really enjoy reliving that legendary game. A lifelong resident of Homewood who went on to play college baseball and football at Samford, Parker is married now to a former classmate, and together with their family, they still live in Homewood. The young kids are just now getting into sports, so look out for 2 more Gargis athletes at Homewood in the years to come. But for now, without further ado, let's welcome in our ninth legend, Parker Gargis. Hello there, Parker Gargis. How you doing?
I am doing great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. I've really been looking forward to talking to you because of one game in particular, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
Let's not waste anybody's time or your time, and let's just jump right into things. Were you born in Birmingham?
I was born in Birmingham here in Homewood, lived here all my life. I went to Homewood High School, then Sanford right across the street. So I'm Homewood for life. So yeah, I was born here.
Where'd you go to middle school? I mean,
Uh,
excuse me, to elementary school.
Elementary school, Edgewood.
Football aside, what's one of the things you loved most about growing up in Homewood?
Oh man, probably just the small town feel. It's obviously a bigger school, but really the small town feel. And I know when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, you could just ride your bike anywhere, friends everywhere. I know Edgewood was with Markle's there and Snow Cone Shop and everything when we were growing up. It was just a small town feel type city, and I've always just loved that about it.
So I'm sure that this had to do with your dad as well as your older brother. But when did you start playing organized football?
So I started in 6th grade. Homewood at that time didn't have a youth league, so we really kind of just did the baseball, the soccer, all that stuff. But really, my older brother had started in 7th grade, played middle school, and he was at the high school at the time. But my dad wanted me to try a year early, and we went over to Vestavia. So I played for a year over in Vestavia's youth league in 6th grade. So that was really my introduction to organized football. It really helped me, I think, moving into middle school, playing that 1 year and getting that under my belt.
Considering that your father was a quarterback at Auburn, did you feel any pressure to be a quarterback and to be a good quarterback?
I don't think there was pressure. I think it was more of a want to. I mean, you don't know when you're growing up if you'll be the guy. I mean, obviously my brother was the quarterback before I was, but I mean, it was always just kind of a family thing. Just wearing number 11, wanting to be a quarterback. That's just what we grew up doing.
Yeah. When was do you recall the game that was your first start?
Yeah, it was actually my first. Well, so I started as a freshman playing safety, but my first actual quarterback start was sophomore year at Benjamin Russell, the first game of the year.
First game
My
of the year.
sophomore year. So really, I think we ended up losing that game 21-14 or something, and
25-18.
25-18. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first start. And really we had a couple younger guys, and I know Bragg was playing with me at that time, Bragg Knott, and we were doing the 2-on 2-off kind of rotation thing. But we were both green, and that was our first crack at it. So
well, that brings up the one of the big questions I wanted to ask you. I've always wanted to ask you this question. How did you feel about the two quarterback rotation?
I ended up loving it just because Bragg was one of my best friends, and we still are best friends. But it really, I mean, he was a really really good quarterback, and I felt like I had my attributes as well, and we kind of played off each other. And if one of us was having a bad game or one of us wasn't doing as well or whatnot, the other would pick another one up. So I think at the time it was, I mean, a little disheartening not to totally have the job. But it was one of my best friends, and I mean, I would have felt some kind of way about him standing on the sideline the whole time. It's the same way he would have felt about me. So I think it worked out great. I obviously got to play my senior year by myself, but I think the two, Coach Jones and Coach Newton, handled it as good as you could have at the time.
Yeah, it definitely worked. I will say that for sure. Coach Newton was your coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you've got plenty to say about the impact he had on your life.
Absolutely. Coach Newton was one of a kind. Him, uh, my brother, dad, everybody, I mean, absolutely love him. And really all the coaches, Coach Jones, Coach Newton, Coach Gann, all those guys, just really couldn't ask for a better coaching staff. But really all those guys were really just amazing guys, putting unlimited hours working with everybody, and couldn't have asked for a better coaching staff. So
Let's talk about the 2000 year, which was your sophomore year. Is there any game that season besides that first Ben Russell game that we've already mentioned that stands out to you?
one of the most fun games that we ran into was Vestavia was 9-0 at the time in 6A, and then coming to Waldrop and us beating them. So that was a really really fun game.
And we had to win that game in order to get home field advantage in the playoffs.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that's the case. But I just remember I'm friends with a few of those Vestavia guys. Dan Burks, who was their running back, really really good running back, went on to play at UAB, but we still talk about it to this day that they were undefeated and we were able to knock them off. Good way to end the season, going into the playoffs to give us a lot of momentum, and feeling really good.
So then in the playoffs, you guys got to play every game at home except for a road game at Oxford.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's pretty comfortable.
That was huge. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And that Oxford game, I remember it was tough at their place. It's not an easy place to play. So really getting that home field advantage was paramount and making a long run.
So okay, now let's talk about the big one, right? and let's break this one down. As you mentioned, we lost to Benjamin Russell in the first game of the year,
Mm-hmm.
but we had also lost the previous season, I guess your freshman year, at their place,
Mm-hmm.
in a tight game, 18-25 game.
Yeah.
So we were coming in on a two game losing streak to these guys.
Absolutely.
And then we gave up. The defense was amazing. We only gave up 3 first downs the entire
Uh,
game, which is just
yeah.
incredible considering the way
hmm
that game turned out. But early in the game, there was a bobbled snap
hmm
on a punt that got Jeremy Schatz hit and injured for the
Uh-huh.
rest of the game, which is all the more miraculous considering the things that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And that led to a short punt that led to Benjamin Russell being able to score and
hmm
go up 7-0. And then in a defensive slugfest, that held up until late in the third quarter. And then that's when things really went crazy. Now everybody talks about the overtime stuff,
hmm
but that game was amazing for more than just the overtime, right? So like I
Absolutely.
said, let's really break this down.
Okay.
So late in the third, Benjamin Russell had a long run from midfield down to the 10-yard line where the guy looked like he was going to score, but
Mhm.
he got caught from behind by Brandon Brown.
Brandon Brown bucket. Yeah, that's what we used to call him. That was a massive play at the time. It being, like you said, a defensive slugfest all the way to that third quarter, early fourth. That was a huge play to hold them. I think it held them to a field goal, maybe, or I can't remember exactly, but that was a massive play by Brandon.
Yeah, it held him to a field goal. And that play gets lost when people talk about
hmm
that game. It's one of those because everything that happened later. But
hmm
everything that happened later may not have happened that way if they go in and score there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
So
there was a lot of guys that made a lot of plays. I mean, Matt Allison, Chris McCauley had 20 something tackles that game. It felt like.
yeah, well, after they scored that field goal there and went up 10-0, that looked huge considering it had been a defensive slugfest and it was late in the third quarter. But here's another part of the game that I think gets overlooked,
Mhm.
and this may have been my favorite part of the whole game, is that after they go up 10-0 like that and it looks very bleak, you go out there and you lead us from quarterback on a 71-yard, 13-play drive
Mhm.
mixing in a lot of short passes, a lot of short runs, with our starting tailback out of the game, Riley Strauss. So you had a sophomore out there, Taylor Parker. Uh,
Parker.
yeah, and that drive was just that was a legendary drive. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, at the time it wasn't looking great with Riley being out. Riley had been our bell cow all year, and Taylor kind of stepping in, who hadn't played a ton at running back, but I mean, if you know Taylor Barker, he's not afraid of anything. I mean, so he just stepped right in. But I just remember being down 10. You're in the late third, fourth quarter, and if you
They've
don't
got
do
all the momentum in the world.
exactly, and if you don't do something at that point, then it's not looking good. So, but yeah, just I mean, I remember running the ball a good bit. Our line blocked really well later on in that game. Had some big holes to run through.
Well, that drive was capped by 2 plays in which you ran the ball from inside the 10. The last one was a quarterback sneak at the 1 yard line where you dove over the top, looked like Bo Jackson going over the top or something. Down there in that same end zone in Legion Field, by the way.
Yeah,
So it cuts the lead to 10-7 with 10 minutes to go in the game. Again, that drive I think a lot of times gets lost in the shuffle, and the leadership that you showed in that drive was just amazing. Um,
appreciate.
but it got crazier from there.
It.
Right?
Yeah, it did.
On the ensuing kickoff, we forced a fumble that was recovered by Chris Turner. And so we get the ball, inside their red zone, and they did hold us to a field goal. But Schatz, who, as we said, got injured earlier in the game, he's hobbling,
Uh huh.
and he goes out there and has to hit a 33-yard field goal. I mean, that was huge.
Yes, it was, and that was I remember it distinctly. It was frustrating not to punch that in after such a big play. I think Chris McCauley knocked it out on their kickoff, and Chris Turner recovered it. But I remember I want to say we got the ball at the 20, 25, something like that.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was frustrating not to punch that in after such a big play. But no shots, like you said, limping the whole game. I mean, late fourth quarter in the state championship.
Yeah, kicks don't get any bigger than that.
No, they
So at
don't.
that point, we got it tied up.
hmm
Got a lot of momentum on our side. We got plenty of time to win the game. There 6 minutes to go in the game. Got plenty of time to win it. We started a drive at our 22-yard line, And then we fumble the ball at midfield. Looks pretty bleak, but the
Mhm.
defense goes out there and just manned up and got
Yeah.
them 3-and-out at midfield.
Okay.
So then they punted,
Hmm.
and we got it at the 14-yard line with 2 minutes to go. So we've still got plenty of time to win the thing. 2 minutes.
Mhm.
Looks like we got plenty of time to go. They forced a punt. We had to punt it after that. And so they got the ball with 1 minute and 24 to go on their 43-yard line. So now it
Okay.
looks like they're about to go in and win the game with a field goal.
Uh-huh.
And then that's when McCauley forced another fumble.
Their quarterback, he caused a fumble by their quarterback or something after the snap, and we got the ball with limited time remaining. I know that, and
49 seconds.
yeah, so I had a couple good runs and then a field goal to try to end it. But obviously ended up getting blocked and pushing us into the overtime. So
Yeah, you had a couple of really good runs. One was a big 20-yarder, got us down to the 11-yard line, to win the thing at the end of regulation. They called timeout to put some ice on it. But then Shots goes out there and gets it blocked. Right?
mhm.
I mean,
Yeah, and
that
you're thinking you almost got it locked up, and then they block it, and it's all right. Let's go again.
so then that's what sent it to overtime, right?
Mhm.
So again, a lot of people don't think about all of that drama
Mhm.
that came in the third and the fourth quarter before the crazy overtimes, right?
Mhm.
But now let's break down each one of the overtimes if you don't mind.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
we get the ball first in the
Mhm.
first overtime, and on a brilliant misdirection play that we hadn't run the whole game,
Mhm.
you get Jake Collins wide open in the end zone.
Yeah.
You remember that play?
I do. I remember the play call, and I was wondering kind of what was going on through Coach Jones's head, but it's called a squirm, and Jake was at tight end at the time, and he leaked behind the line, and leaked out the opposite side. We rolled out right and kind of on a throwback and wide open on third down. So great play call by Coach Jones. It was, I mean,
Yeah.
risky to call that at that time, but it worked perfectly.
Well, give yourself some credit too. I mean, yes, he was wide open, but as you know, sometimes when you get somebody that wide open in a situation like that, your momentum can make you sell it right over their
Yeah,
head.
that's true. That's
Right?
true.
But you hit him, and so we go up. But then they come back and they're part of the overtime, and they're just running the ball. They had thrown more than 2 or 3 passes the whole game. So
Hmm.
they're just running the ball, and they scored on third down to send us into a second overtime.
Yeah, they were running that midline option with two bruising running backs, and it's tough to stop when you're only 10 yards out for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Even when you know what they're going to do, I mean,
Exactly.
So then we go into the second overtime. They get the ball first, obviously, but they get into a fourth down situation, fourth and goal at the 1, and instead of kicking a field goal, to secure the points, their coach rolls the dice, decides to go for it on that fourth and 1, and they score. They get in there and they score that touchdown, right? What are you thinking at that point?
I'm thinking we got to go out there and score. It's a little more nerve wracking. I mean, it's obviously the age old you're in overtime, you take the ball second, so you know what you got to do. But it's also when they've already scored a touchdown, it puts all the pressure on you to go in and score. So it's and a little bit of it is being 15, 16 at the time, just oblivious to the moment. Just go out there, try to score, and see what happens.
You were just out there playing ball, right?
Exactly.
So you scored on that one on a 4-yard run,
Mhm.
and then Shots comes out, ties it up. Right. Everybody also forgets how he is having to again hobbling, going out there and having to kick extra points, extra points, extra points. Right.
Exactly.
So then we go into a third overtime. We get the ball first. You scored on a 6-yard run, basically the same play,
Yeah.
right? That they used to talk about. We couldn't stop their play. They couldn't stop, your fake to the halfback and then running it. Um,
Exactly.
and something that gets lost on that one is that Shots comes out there and just barely makes that extra point. Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
yeah. No, I remember it was. I couldn't remember exactly what overtime it was. I just remember a couple of them just sneaking inside the crossbar, so they're the upright. So it was at that point. If you miss an extra point,
You're
it's
doomed. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, he just barely got that one in. But then they come back, also just running the ball again. and they score on a fourth down play again. They had to go for it on fourth down because we had scored the touchdown. But their tailback got hurt on the play. He barely scored and got hurt.
I mean, obviously he scored on that play, but later on, and I think in the fifth overtime, he had to come out of the game, which was huge at that point because he was, I mean, every bit of 220, 230 at that time and tough to tackle.
So that sends us into the fourth overtime. Both teams got held to a field goal. Theirs was a longer one, just making things more dramatic because we had a big sack
Yeah.
that looked like may have won the game because they're forced into a 34-yard field goal, but they make it.
Yeah.
And then they hold. We got to go out there and score a touchdown. Can't get it done. So Sach has got to come out there and hit another field goal. He hits a 23-yarder, drills that one. So then we go into the fifth and the final overtime. We got the ball first. It was third and goal from about the 5. And do you remember that play?
I don't remember exactly the play call. I remember the play, obviously, throwing it out to Colt. I mean, amazing receiver, but I remember being tight coverage. I remember rolling to my left and hitting Colt kind of on an out route. Like I said, at that time, you're oblivious, just make the throw and catch it. And Colt never dropped anything. So it worked out for the best.
Yeah, well, that was again being a little humble. That's not an easy throw. Moving your left like that, and at that angle that you had to throw it. That's not an easy pass.
No, it was not. But like I said, I knew Colt wherever I threw it would catch it. He was all season he had made diving catches, everything. So it was a good guy to have out there to throw it to for sure.
Sure. So then they come out. They've got to score a touchdown. Now their running game is limited because, as we said, that tailback, that big bruiser, is out, and so they actually got in a situation where they were having to throw the ball a little bit.
Yeah.
And so fourth and goal from the 5. Talk about that play.
So I
And
can't
you were
remember.
actually in playing safety at that point.
I think it was Chris Turner, one of our better safeties, ended up either cramping up or rolling his ankle or something, had to come out of the game. So I went in just at safety and knowing they had to pass. So really just kind of stayed back in coverage. And Jonathan Herr, a senior safety, one of my good buddies, ended up kind of batting it away. And that was all she wrote. So no, I remember that distinctly. And Chris Turner getting hurt and Coach Wright coming up to me, he was like, "You got to go out there." So nerve wracking on one side, and then just go out there on defense. So.
Well, there were 3 of you standing around that Benjamin Russell receiver, but he still could have made that catch if her hadn't jumped up and knocked that thing down.
Absolutely, that was a great play by Jonathan for sure.
Yeah. So that wins the game. Homewood wins the state championship. It's go crazy time. Do you remember the emotions?
I do. I mean, after that long of a game, that exciting of a game, I just remember just being elated. But I remember first guy found to hug was Bragg, the other quarterback, and just happiness. Growing up, watching my older brother play at Homewood, you dream of the state championship at that point. So just knowing you had just done it was pure elation.
Yeah, well, as a Homewood fan, a longtime Homewood fan like myself, I was so euphoric. I almost felt like I was floating off the ground, and the reason why is, not only because the game was so crazy, but because with the '95 state championship game being the exception, Homewood had a long, 2-decade streak of miserable championship games, right?
I was at a couple of them.
Were you at that Robert Davis one? That
Yeah, I believe I was with Wes Steed and Robert Davis. I believe.
Yeah,
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 I was
yeah,
at
yeah,
that one.
yeah. So you could appreciate the full context of it in Homewood history as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I was a
Uh,
young kid, but I remember watching that heartbreak and one team's got to win, one team's got to lose.
okay, so let's talk now about your junior season, '01. So going back to the fifth game of the your sophomore year, Homewood goes on a 25 game win streak. All right, which is still just amazing to think about, right? And in that junior year, you guys were beating the crap out of just about everybody. You had a close game with Benjamin Russell, ironically enough, in the first game of the year, 18-15. But other than that, in a 1-point win over Briarwood, you beat everybody by 2 or 3 touchdowns, including a 31-0 shutout against Gardendale, 46-22 win at Vestavia.
That whole junior season, we had a really talented team for sure. That senior class was very talented.
And then we beat Russellville for the second year in a row in the semifinals.
Mhm.
Poor
So that
Russellville. That was the beginning of us, putting a punching bag on Russellville that lasted for a few years, right?
yeah, I played in the All-Star game with a few of those guys, and they were not too fond of Homewood, that's for sure.
Yeah. So Homewood finds their way back into the state championship game against, lo and behold, Benjamin Russell, playing them the fifth time in 3 years. And, Brandon Thornton had a great game, 92-yard touchdown run, finished with 132 yards. But we lose that one 20-13. And I'm going to ask you about a one particular play. We won't go into kind of the detail we did the other game, but there's one particular play that I want to ask you about. You may
Mhm.
know what it is. It's not a great moment. It was late in the third.
Mhm.
We faced the 3rd and 25 on our own 10-yard line.
Uh-huh.
And we decided to opt for a quick kick.
Uh-huh.
You remember what I'm talking about?
I do. It's not a fond moment, but it's a moment.
So what happened, Parker? Tell us what happened.
Well, I mean, I think we ended up getting really backed up. We had taken a sack. I think it was either 3rd and 20 something or something like that. But I remember Coach Jones calling it, and really we had worked on it some because I punted that year, so it wasn't anything really out of the ordinary for me to kick it. But we had worked on that quick kick during the week. Just backed up, dropped it, and just came off the side of my foot. Went about 7 to 10 yards and went out of bounds. And not a great feeling, especially when it was a tight game at the time. Kind of a defensive battle similar to the previous year.
Yeah.
Really put them in a very easy position to score a touchdown, which at that point mattered a lot in that game. So definitely not a great moment.
Yeah, that led to them punching it in with the go-ahead TD, and they just added to that with a field goal and won 20-13. But the game really, hinged on that play. I
Mhm.
have always wanted to ask Coach Jones what he was thinking on that, but you say
Yeah,
you
I mean,
guys have worked on it.
we had worked on it. It was, I mean, definitely not on Coach Jones, 100% on me. Just kind of came off the side of the foot, and it was like I said, I think I was our punter that year, so it wasn't anything that I hadn't done before. I just made a mistake and came off the side of the foot. So that one stings for sure. It hurt all season going into my senior year for sure.
I can believe it. Sorry to bring it up.
No, I mean, it's on record. So
But turned out great because then the '02 season comes along. You're the senior, you're the man. No sharing the position. Besides the 2017 loss at Briarwood, that year we whipped everybody by 3 to 4 touchdowns,
yeah.
including Thompson and Vestavia.
Hmm.
And that continued on into the playoffs. We got a revenge win at Briarwood, 35-25. So then we return to the state championship game against Russellville, Coach
Hmm.
Newton's alma mater, ironically enough.
Yeah.
But what stands out the most to you about that game?
Senior year, starter all year, just wanted to cap my career with a win. That whole year, playing with your buddies, all my senior buddies, Andrew Reed, Taylor Barker was with me, great linebacker. Just would hate to go out with a loss there. And Russellville was a really good team. Like you said, we had some battles with them. I think we played them in the semifinals my sophomore year, semifinals my junior year, and then in the state championship my senior year. But just a great game. They had a really good team, and
You
just
remember how well their quarterback played in that game?
absolutely. He at that time throwing for 300 plus yards
$375,
was very rare.
375.
Yeah. And I mean, it was they had a great team, and my whole extended family's from kind of up in that area, Ford City, near Florence. So we knew Russellville really well. A lot of my extended family was at that game, so it was a fun one to win for sure.
So Homewood wins the game, getting their second state championship in 3 years. Pretty incredible. And you obviously were a major reason why that happened. All right, let's travel back in time, and I think you already know well, I think I already know what your answer is going to be to this. if we could travel back in time right now and you could play any game or even any one particular play over again, what would it be?
I mean, that quick kick would be a pretty one to go to. But no, I mean, I think I mean I say that, but the loss there. I don't know that we win it the next year. You really can't go back and change anything, but
So
I
it
think
became a big motivator for you.
absolutely it did. It became a motivator for me, for coach, for all of our senior class. It was tough to lose that one, but I think it helped us in the long run for sure. But no, I mean that whole game really would be fun to go back and play because we didn't put our best foot forward, and that's no slight against Bender and Russell. They were a great team. We could have that one over. We would like to. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
When did you first start getting recruited?
So I mean, obviously, when my brother signed with Auburn, we had talked to some different schools, and really, I mean, I didn't have the size to be a major big time prospect. Being 5'11", it's really not an ideal quarterback size. Maybe back in the '70s or something, it would have worked. But no, I got talked to from your Middle Tennessee states, your UABs, your stuff. But always baseball was always in the back of my mind for sure. I love baseball. And so my two that I really narrowed it down to was Sanford and UNA because my goal was to play both really, and they were going to give me that option. So I just I love football, but I love baseball just as much. So I would hate to have given that up.
So you went far away to college, right across the street to
Exactly.
Sanford,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So looking back, what do you take the most pride and happiness in about your playing career at Homewood?
I take a lot of pride in obviously winning games, but also kind of the way we did it. I feel like we were a class that wasn't overly physically gifted, but we ended up getting it done. Had a lot of guys, kind of no nonsense or no look at me guys that just play and enjoyed playing with each other.
All right, now I'm going to do something with you that
Okay.
I call Nito stats.
Okay.
So I'm going to give some Nito stats about your career, and there's a lot. So get ready. You played quarterback in 3 state championship games, winning 2. Of Homewood's 18 region championships, you were quarterback for 3. Of Homewood's 16 10-plus win seasons, you were quarterback for 3 of those. You were honorable mention All Metro, Birmingham Metro in your junior and senior year from the Birmingham News. You were honorable mention All State by the Alabama Sports Writers your senior year. Your senior year completion rate was 65.3, which is still 5th all time in Homewood history. Your junior year completion rate was 65.6, which is 4th all time in Homewood history. Now, we need to give a shout out to Bragg Knott. He's still number 1 on that list, 68.9 completion rate his senior year. Your 1,823 passing yards in your senior year is still 9th all time in Homewood history. And your 17 passing touchdowns your senior year is still 9th all time in Homewood history. Okay, that's season. Now let's talk about career. Your 2,314 career rushing yards. You were a quarterback, for goodness sake. You did go in at tailback from time to time, though, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But mainly as a quarterback, 2,314 career rushing yards, still 6th all time in Homewood history. As a quarterback, all right, your average of 5.6 yards per carry for your career is still 10th all time. Your career completion rate was 62.6%, which is still 4th all time in Homewood history. And by the way, your brother is 6th on that list at 58%. So you're ahead of your brother on that. Your 36 passing touchdowns for your career is 4th all time. By the way, your brother is 6th all time on that. So you got him on that one as well. Your career 303 completions is still 5th all time in Patriot history. By the way, your brother is 9th on that list. So you got him on that. Your 4,058 career passing yards is 5th all time in Homewood history. Your brother is 7th on that list, so you got him on that. Now I bring this up because I'm a younger brother too, and
Yeah.
right.
I had one more year. I mean, it was rotate, but I had one more year playing, so I had a little bit of help there. So
Well,
it
that's
was
true.
yeah,
Here's the last thing I'll say about all those stats. how many more could it have been if you hadn't been splitting time your sophomore and junior years?
That's true. That's true. So, but I mean, like I said, I wouldn't trade it. Brad's one of my best friends. It ended up working out great. When you talk about kind of our offenses back in the day comparing to offenses now, it's nice to still be up there because they sling it around a lot more nowadays.
That was what I was just about to say. I mean, you guys didn't sling the ball nearly as much as they do now. So the fact that you're still fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh on all of these lists, pretty amazing stats. Okay, the last thing I want to do is also something I do with Coach Bergeson's that I call rapid fire.
All right.
Who was your favorite teacher at Homewood? Not coach, teacher.
If I had to pick a favorite teacher, Mr. Helmer's a math teacher. I used to love him. Dr. Connors taught physics. I had really good time in his classes. He was brilliant, but I would say one of those two, probably Helmer's or Connors.
So was math your favorite subject?
I wouldn't say I always liked history. I think history was my favorite at the time.
What was your favorite fruit? The fruit from the lunchroom?
Ooh, fruit. I wasn't a
No,
huge
food,
fruit.
just food,
Oh,
just
food.
food.
Okay. Probably the Strombolis. I don't know why. I don't know if that's a
That
popular
sounds good.
food.
They didn't have Strombolis in my day.
Anything unhealthy. That's my go.
All right. Do you recall when you got your first personal computer?
I know it was in high school. We tried to burn a few CDs and ended up putting a lot of viruses on it, I think. Yeah, it would take about an hour to burn a CD with 10 songs. But no, I think we ended up getting one in high school, kind of the same time as a cell phone. But no, I think we ended up getting one probably my sophomore year in high school, maybe.
What was your favorite video game in high school?
Probably just the NCAA games. I know they're coming out with a new one this year. Used to love the NCAA football games. And I was never a Madden guy. I always liked the NCAA college ones, so you could play with guys you always emulated growing up.
Okay, when you were in high school, now keep in mind I'm putting you in the context of high school here.
Okay.
Would you rather have had a date with Cher from Clueless, which was Alicia Silverstone, or Michelle Allison Hannigan from American Pie?
Probably Clueless. I think Alicia
Yeah.
Silverstone she was pretty fun.
Ow! Get off of me! Oh,
Okay, the year is 2001. You're cruising through Homewood on a Friday night in the summer. What's playing on your CD player?
It's probably some kind of older country, 90s country, Sammy Kershaw, something like that, or even, I mean, some hip hop that was probably not approved by my parents, something like that.
What were you driving?
I drove a '93 Isuzu Rodeo.
Ooh,
Probably my favorite car I've ever had. It lasted a long time, had 260 something thousand miles on it.
so
But I love it.
you drove it till the wheels came off.
Absolutely.
Where would you have been cruising to?
Back before they developed everything, we used to just kind of go out to the fields out past West Oxmoor out there. There was, I mean, kind of where Lakeshore Extension is. So somewhere out there, just hang out with the guys and have a bonfire or something. So
Did you go mud riding out there? Now, when I was in high school, we went mud riding out there.
we did. My rodeo wasn't 100% the best car to take, but we had some buddies with some trucks and stuff. So yeah, we did.
What was your favorite hangout?
Probably somewhere out there. I don't know. I mean, but hanging
Bonfire out there in the woods, right?
yeah, just a bonfire out there in the woods.
Now, in my day, after the football games, we went and hung out at Mr. Gaddy's Pizza up on Valleydale. Were you guys doing that at that point? Was that done?
We were a Purple Onion kind
Purple
of.
Onion.
Yeah,
Okay.
a lot of us would usually go up to Purple Onion and kind of hang out after the game. Whether it was, I mean, to be honest with you, we'd stay and watch sideline 90, whatever it was, and kind of watch your highlights, and then go over to Purple Onion, get something to eat, head back home.
Okay, last one, and then we're done. Can you sum up your time at Homewood in about a sentence?
Great classmates, great teammates, great coaches. Couldn't ask for a better high school experience. Just a great time. Homewood's a hard place to be.
All right, Parker. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you breaking down what I still consider to be the greatest football game, not just in Homewood history, but maybe in high school football history in the state of Alabama.
I certainly appreciate you having me on. It's been a lot of fun to talk to you.
Great. Take care.
All right. Thank you, Glenn.